You're listening to the Bombad Generals.
General? Oh.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Bombad Tactics. I'm here with Seth. We've got new artwork.
Howdy.
So new look on the your podcast feeds, but same old mediocre content inside.
I think of like the branding whenever like a new brand, like Pepsi or something comes out with new brands, like different look, but same great taste. That's us.
Same great taste. And it's, you know, a lot of branding. This is very off topic, but they talk a lot about like debranding these days, where a lot of brands are going simplified, and so it looks better on whatever small screens and apps and whatever, and losing a lot of that good juicy branding. I think we did a good mix with this new art that you've pulled up for us. It still has that nice Gungan feel, but less crayon text, which was fun and funky. I liked it. I think it's just dumb and silly, but this looks streamlined and professional.
Yes, we look like proper generals now. Although we're not. We may go back to silly. Who knows?
We'll see. Exactly.
We'll see.
Let us know what you think, and we will really ignore what you say, but yell into the void. If it makes you feel better, good or bad.
If you're one of those who does that in the internet, please do.
But today we are taking a detour from the series we've been doing, because it is going to be a long ass series, so we can't, we don't want to bore people too much necessarily with the same thing over and over again. Seth, do you want to describe what we're talking about today and maybe a little bit of the impetus behind it?
Yeah, so we are talking about list building and how to build an effective list, and some of this will also like play into worlds coming up, and how do you build an effective list for like worlds coming up, or your local tournament, your first tournament, or just any tournament coming up. We want to talk about like your strengths and what, just effective list building when it comes and building a well-rounded list.
For sure, because for worlds especially, now is kind of the time you want to be settling on something to get enough reps. One of the things, I was doing Scoundrels earlier this week, I don't know, time flies, but one of the things I said there is I think personally, it's better to go into an event like Adepticon knowing your list and having a lot of reps with your list, rather than tweaking, changing until the last minute, and maybe having some slightly better, list choices. It's better to have a slightly less optimized list, but know it really well, than maybe what would be a more optimized list that you don't fully understand or don't know its weaknesses and strengths fully yet.
And I think that like goes to say like LVO happened this past few weeks where like Obi-Wan won. Like I don't think anyone would have guessed that, but it was someone like the player knew the list really well and knew how to optimize it. So a lot of people could be like, oh, like this unit's not meta, but if you know it really well, it could do well.
So we'll kind of walk through an example, but I guess before we get to that, or maybe multiple examples, we'll see how different our list building approaches are, because we haven't discussed this ahead of time. Where do you start with the list building? What's your first thought of, I need to make a new list because X, or I want to make a new list because X? Where does it all begin for you generally?
Yeah, so there's two different approaches that I have to list building. One, do I want this list to be really good? Or two, do I want to play a certain character? Or like, what playstyle do I want to do? Or like, what character do I want to do? I guess I should say. So let's talk about character first, because that's more the fun one.
Before we get too far, though, I do think that sometimes they can be together, because there are definitely times, and we'll kind of get into this with the example actually, where you think, hey, I think this character could be really powerful right now for whatever reason, and I want to kind of highlight their strengths because I think they're a good fit for the meta, or I think that they're just slept on and really efficient. But there's also times where it's just like, hey, I'm going to a local this weekend, or even a bigger event, and I really want to play with this character that I haven't played with or that I really like or whatnot. So sorry, continue.
No, I like that. So yeah, So we're going to talk about character. Okay, so when I'm building a list for a character, pretty much, let's say I'm going to do a Rex. I don't think it's been a minute since I've done a Rex, but Rex, and then from that character, I then okay, I really want to play Rex. Then I look at his strengths. One, he's good at synergizing with clones, so I'm going to put a lot of clones in that list. Two, he's great at aim support, so arcs love aim, so I'll probably throw in some arcs. And three, he's more of a gun line, just from his command cards. He's more of a gun line list and less of an objective list. So, mobility, I should say, because gun lines can still be objective lists. But so I'm not really going to put bikes in there because he's not really a supporting commander for bikes. So I take those three things and I just then I start building my core around it and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think especially too when you start with characters, because of the command hand. A lot of the first thought is, for me, before I even fill out the core and the special forces and bikes and whatnot, I kind of think, what other characters am I trying to put in here? Because if I'm building a character like Rex, then am I going to go with Yoda or Anakin? Probably not, which means I probably want to get aggressive tactics in the list for more surges, which means, okay, if I have another character with Rex, maybe it'll be a clone commander versus Cody. Not to say Rex Cody couldn't be a thing, but that's kind of how my thought process would go of okay, what pairings really make sense? Okay, I'm going to want to do X, Y, and Z with Rex, which in this case would be maybe aggressive tactics. So he'll be the main character, and then maybe I'll put fives or someone in one of the cores and kind of build from there.
Yeah, and a character like Rex, I could see this also with a character like Leia or a character like Cassian or something, to where they're not super strong on their own, but they're more of a supporting commander. There's a lot of supporting commanders out there, so you're not going to see Rex shine a lot. So then I'm okay, what other units do I want to shine? I think Rex is very unique to where he can make the whole army shine, all the core shine, and it's just you just have a lot of good units that are solid. Or you could do a thing man, I want 2 arc units that are really good, and just they support those 2 full arc units and something. So that's where after Rex, build also some other units that are shine. Man, these are beefy units that I'm going to rely on. And for Cassian on Rebels, it could be man, I'm blanking on what a great unit is in Rebels.
I mean, I think a lot of people put Cassian with Ahsoka because you think, okay, hey, Cassian's going to provide this long-range support, and he has good cards that combo with other other characters, with his Last Stand and Volunteer Mission specifically. So then you could put him with Luke, but then you're kind of losing some of Luke's cards, which is,
it's a give and take.
Opportunity cost for someone who's so expensive, especially. So then Ahsoka, she combos well. She likes all the dodges she can get from the 2-pip, and she loves the refresh that she can get because she doesn't have Master of the Force from the 3-pip. She can kind of be your frontliner while he's in the back. So then you kind of build out from there of okay, I've got this concept of this dual character. The whole army is obviously very important in Legion, but I think one of the really interesting things, and why, if you look at it, we have a lot more characters at this point than we have core units. But it's okay because swapping out characters can really give the list a different feel. The very same list core, but swapping out, Ahsoka and Cassian for name 2 Rebel Han and Chewie, it's going to be very different. So that's where I want to start because it has such a big impact. I want to think about how that trickles down to everything else.
Boom. So let's do that. Let's build the list.
Yeah.
Let's
build the list. So I was thinking for this list, because this was a list I was playing around with, looking at Adepticon and whatnot. Spoiler alert, I don't think it's ultimately good enough, but we can kind of get into that whole process. So I started with thinking, I'll pull up the share screen. I started with thinking that, you know what, Bosk could be a pretty decent fit for this meta. The problem is then people started running SA a lot more in their Yoda gun lines, and then he becomes not as good a fit. So
now,
spoiler alert for why that happened.
Why did you come to the conclusion that like Bosk? Was it more like you want to play Bosk or like his play style?
Because of a few things. I think Bounty definitely is very helpful. You know, we're going through our whole
victory points
series and thinking that, you know, that extra objective that you can grab is very handy, or that extra VP, I should say. There's a lot of defensive tech out there, but if it's an SA ball without, if it's a clone ball without SA, situational awareness, then they don't have outmaneuver. So you can easily put through, if you're putting through 2 shots with Bosk with the proper aim support, you're looking at maybe 6 or 7 crits, pierce 2, they can block 1 with barrier, and then they're kind of hooped. Versus, you know, if you're doing other stuff, they're just dodge spamming and everything. You know, and high velocity is probably maybe not enough. And he has his 1 pip, the poison, could actually be really good if you can launch that on an entire clone ball, because that's just guaranteed damage on a whole lot of things. And Palp also brings tricks. So in the positional battle with a Yoda ball or with anything else, you have an ability to double attack with always, if you want, with Bosk, or you can also move units around to, you know, avoid fire supports, this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
And it's great in many matchups. Like that Palp 2 pip is still very good. The amount of times where I've used it to get a bounty because, you know, they can't run away and I make Bosk go first is non-zero for sure.
Yeah.
So that is kind of getting ahead of ourselves in a sense. So because I started with Bosk, and I said, okay, I want to make Bosk work. Yeah. And then, as I said, we've got Palp in there as well, because that's really what I want to make Bosk shine and really do the thing he's good at. I need volume. I need multiple attacks a turn. We can kind of get into the upgrades a little bit later, I would say.
So you're pretty much bringing Palp for I think
pull the strings.
Pull the strings and then 2-bit. Wow. It's like that's a almost 200 point unit that you're like,
hey, or he's also got the 1 pip though. He's also got the 1 pip.
It's true. But that also brings that like
in a pinch.
You're making Bosk shine, but okay, now you're flexing into other things that you can because of
100 exactly.
Yeah, Palp.
Yeah. So that was my thinking there. And then the next thing is, okay, now we kind of have to fill some other stuff out. We want to make Bosk, we want to protect him, and we've got Entourage to Royal Guard, so we might as well throw a Royal Guard in there. I want to have some decent guns, because with all the, you know, Ewoks and soon Geonosians and just droids in general, there are many lists out there that just have a lot of wounds. And if we're just putting all our eggs in the Bosk basket, he can't kill stuff fast enough. So if I want some other guns, you can take, you know, this is a spot where I think one of the questions we had was, you know, how do we know how meta a unit is and whatnot? And that one's just it's hard to say, especially as a new player starting out, to say, oh, should I put shore troopers and mortars in, or should I put stormtroopers in with the Sixth Man, or Snows, or Pikes, or Black Suns? And it's hard to give an all-around rule of thumb for that. I think what I would suggest, especially starting out, if you're not sure which you should go with, which is more meta or whatnot, is just understand your reason for putting the unit in.
I'd agree.
Because if you know why you put it in, then you can go out and test it, and you can either say, yep, the reason I put it in was a good reason and this is working for me, or you know what, this actually didn't work for me because X, Y, and Z, so I'll reevaluate the reason and maybe change it around. Because maybe they fulfilled the reason and it was just not a good reason, if that makes sense. Or maybe they're actually not good at what you thought. So my reasoning here would be, hey, I want to take shore troopers and mortars because they're relatively cheap when you pair them together, and you are getting more range 4 crits and laying down a decent amount of suppression. So that's my reasoning. If I went into a game and, they're not operating well in that regard, then maybe I stop, reevaluate, and maybe go for more beef in stormtroopers. But right now, I would say, I just want I want to support Bosk with range 4 guns and suppression. So bring in
the short troopers with the T-21B, two of them, and then 2 mortars.
2 of those and a couple mortars, right? So check in. Okay, we're at 7 activations. We're at 612. At this point is probably when I would start tossing some upgrades in, because especially with Force users, those upgrades can get expensive pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So Bosk, we want to highlight him. So I'll start with him. I want to have Hunter for more aims because he's making multiple attacks a turn. And to get bounties, seize the initiative to combo with that Palpatine 2-pip.
Yep.
And then because I'm going to be getting a lot of aims, I'll put targeting scopes.
Yeah, reroll 3 dice instead of 2 whenever you spend an aim, because you're going to have a lot of aims.
I turn 2 aims into effectively 3 aims.
Yep.
Which, for the amount of aims we're going to get by the end of this, will probably be a lot. Palp, you want anger for that 1-pip.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can kind of choose 2 of 3 of burst of speed, force barrier, force push. I went with push and barrier because, again, I want to protect Bosk.
You want to protect Bosk, and you're not running Palp in, so you're going to hold back Palp.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, obviously, you can kind of get mixed up in, hey, do I want burst of speed, do I want force push? There are arguments for both, so again, I think my recommendation there is just understand the reason. If I'm taking burst of speed, it's probably so I can quickly get to where I need to really make that 1-pip shine. Versus if I'm taking force push, I'm using it defensively if someone's coming at my line to mess them up.
But from what I'm hearing is, like, in the list that you're building, you're not, just because you have the 1-pip doesn't mean you're relying on the 1-pip.
Exactly.
It's just more, it seems like it's more of a backup, like, late game thing.
Mm-hmm. But if you were, if you wanted to include Palp and you're trying to make Palp a bigger deal as well, then that will kind of just, you can still kind of make it work with the list. You just change some stuff up. So you put in burst of speed, and maybe you put in a few more medics. We'll see here, I don't have a lot of medics, which you generally do in a Palp list, because he's not the center of the list.
Yeah.
If I really want to center it more around him, then you just kind of change some upgrades around, change some units.
I think that goes to say that, like, because a unit has, like, let's say Palp, for instance, has that 1-pip, doesn't mean you have to put everything, like, everyone says it's a really good 1-pip. It's a great 1-pip, but that doesn't mean you have to put all your eggs in that basket.
For sure. So we've got about 150 points. We're looking at we could put 2 more units in there.
Looking at 7 activations.
Activations. So, and 2 more units, I'd say, is the way to go rather than 1 unit and a lot of upgrades. Just so we're sitting at 9, a nice kind of average amount of activations, because Bosk can be squishy. We don't want to be too out-activated. We want to be able to kind of last first if possible. So if we're going to do 2 more, again, there's a few ways I forgot in upgrades, we'll toss Protector on the IRGs because we want to keep people alive. And again, I think the upgrades and some of the smaller tweaks, when you're talking about like counter meta, you don't skew. For me, I never try to necessarily skew my whole list counter meta. It might be an impetus of like, hey, I think Bosk is a good fit for this meta, but I'm not going to be like everything, the entire list tried to build to beat Clone Ball or Armor or whatnot, because that's too many eggs in one basket. So
yeah, you want to be well-rounded against all the lists.
Exactly. But at the fringes, once I kind of have the shape of the list, maybe here I say, you know what, with 150 points left, I'm going to add in, I'm really concerned about Dark Troopers, I'm very concerned about Tempest Force. I will add in 2 HH-12 Stormtroopers and then some upgrades, because that's my tech. I'm going to add in some extra impact. Or maybe I'm saying, hey, you know what? I want more of a solid gun line, and I want even more guns, because I'm concerned about the Ewoks and the Geonosians, and I really want to suppress the heck out of those clones. So I'm going to add in a 3rd Shore and a mortar, plus some upgrades. For me, maybe this would have been better. Maybe this is what I should have done. What I ended up doing, because the impetus was, I want to really highlight Bosk. I wanted to get a few more aims on him. So I added a couple more units that can give aims. The Imperial Officer also helps order control, because there are going to be turns when Palp doesn't have an order and I kind of want to delay him. So in that case, I can draw the Imperial Officer, and then the second time I draw a commander, I'll give her improvised orders. Then I added another IRG to, again, protect Bosk and give them both Electro Binocs. And that got me right to 800. And that was the approach of, hey, I want to make Bosk shine. Now, that all being said, you get this out on the table and, maybe Bosk isn't enough. Or you run into a list with SA and you say, I'm just hard countered. I can't do enough because too many eggs are in the Bosk basket. In which case, maybe you scrap the list, like I'm kind of leaning towards, or you go back to the drawing board and you say, you know what? I have too many. I'm going too hard into Bosk. So I will take off that Royal Guard. I will take off that Imperial Officer. I'll get the 3rd Shore Mortar, and I'll turn the Force Push into Burst of Speed. So now I have more kind of distributed threat.
Yeah.
Bosk isn't the superstar anymore. He's still good, but now Palp can carry a bit more of the load. Now the Shore Troopers there's 50% more Shore Troopers. Yeah,
your threat's more distributed.
Exactly.
Nice. Yeah.
And if my list building approach is changing, then you know what? Maybe I take one of these upgrades off of Bosk. Maybe I take off scopes. And, that wasn't enough. So maybe I take off Hunter and I get a medic, so that I can really lean into Palp even more. Or maybe I, try it. Oops. Oh, I added it to everything. At the end of the day, you iterate and you try again. You iterate and you try again. And that's why, again, you should kind of, the sooner the better, that you can kind of solidify your concept, because that's where you make the small tweaks.
Yeah.
If I came back and was like, you know what, instead of Bosk, I want Boba Fett, that's changing a lot of the list. But if I say, instead of Shore Mortar, I want HH-12s, that's where I tech for meta.
Yeah.
And tweak.
And I think it's important to say that, like, no list is going to be like 100% perfect. Like, there's always going to be matchup like, oh man, I wish I did this iteration of this list than this. But I think that's where, like, what you want to do is, like, comes into play a lot. It's like, man, I want more Bosk, and I'm really good with Bosk, and you put more eggs. But, like, I feel like, me personally, I do better with better threat saturation, so I would probably do the Shore Mortar just to add more beef whenever I do come up against, like, another gun line or something. So I think that's just where your personal taste, like, comes into play right here.
For sure, 100%. And I think as well that where was I going with this? Yes. The other thing to consider that we didn't really talk about in all of this is the objective deck.
Yep.
And I think that kind of, over time, you kind of get a feel for how you're going to line up the objective deck. But I think it's good to kind of think at the start and then check back again at the end. Hey, what objectives can I do? Because I've had list ideas and I've built the list, and then I have to make it's really easy. You put the units in, and then you just kind of stop there and you look at it and you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then later when you actually have to play, you're like, you make the command hand and you make the objective deck. But then sometimes you sit there and you make the objective deck and you realize, oh shoot, there's not even like 4 objectives I feel really good about.
Yeah.
And if you get into the deployments and conditions, you can find it. But if you can't find 4 objectives that you feel good with for your own deck, probably not going to have a very successful list. You want to have 4 that you're good with, and then probably 2 that you're okay with, and then 2 that you can
Worst, you can pass.
Yeah.
You can.
So, if we're looking at this list, we want to make sure, okay, are there 4 objectives that we actually like to play? Breakthrough? Heck no. We don't want, we could play it, but we don't want to put that in our list. Intercept? Yeah, we got lots of core, lots of trooper bodies. We got lots of guns. We can threaten the middle. Yeah, we'll take intercept.
Every unit's a scoring unit, so that's nice.
Exactly. We got 9 scoring units. We have ways to punish them if they want to move up. Great.
Yeah.
Key positions. Heck yeah. If we just sit and shoot for 5 turns and then crowd the middle, I feel great about that.
Play Palps 1 pip, turn 6, you're good.
Yeah. Recover the supplies. Would I put this in my deck? Probably not. But honestly, Bosk is, if you play the 2 pip and like use it for double move claim and then pull the strings, like that's not terrible. We could play recover. We'll pass it for now, but we'll keep it in mind. Sabotage the moisture evaporators. Yep, I feel good about that, of winning the attrition battle. Hostage exchange. Yeah, I feel good. I've got Palp, so I can pull the strings on my hostage. Turn 2, I can play the 2 pip, so they can't move their hostage, and maybe I can wipe it off the table. So there we go. We found 4 that we like. Payload. Hey, yeah, fine. I'll play that. So we've got 4 that we like. We've got a couple that we feel okay.
Yeah, recover and payload you're probably okay with, and then breakthrough and bombing run.
We're never going to play bombing run. If we get caught in a choice between breakthrough and bombing run, we'll do it. We'll play breakthrough. It's not like we're quad FD or something.
Yeah.
So, and because we're feeling decent on all those objectives, we feel okay about building to 800. Mm-hmm. It's possible, especially these days with bids smaller, if you really want to objective skew and you really only feel comfortable about 4 objectives, then that can work, but you gotta bid for it.
Yeah,
really gotta bid for it.
You really gotta bid for it. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah. So that's the example, kind of the start to finish, how I like to look at lists. And I would say that it is starting with a character. Whether it's a casual list or a competitive list, it's a character or a set of units. Because sometimes it might be like, hey, I want to highlight bikes. With all these kind of more static, if it's more of a static gun line meta that I'm seeing, maybe I want to swerve and go objectives with bikes. Or whatnot. So it doesn't have to be a character per se, but usually it's a unit or something like that I want to kind of build around. And generally it's because I think they're a good fit for what I'm seeing.
I agree.
Any other things we want to add on, like from a starting out perspective or reading the meta? The only thing I can really think of is just, look at what's doing well.
For instance, like you see a lot of defense, look what's doing well. Look at those tournament recaps. I probably wouldn't fixate so much on tournament recaps. Mm-hmm. But if you see a lot of like right now, defensive tech is always high. I think that's always going to be in the meta, no matter what point of the game we're in. You found a way to okay, how do I approach that? But then also it's we've seen a lot of armor. Your list would also work really good against armor because you have all those crits. Mm-hmm. But it's not super great on objective skews. Mm-hmm. So it's I think those are probably the 3 different things that the different categories I would say is the defensive tech, armor, or objective skews. Probably those 3 are always going to be prevalent in the meta no matter what. Yeah. And then you have
to take chances.
Yeah, you'll have to take chances.
You'll just be you know what? I'll risk having this bad matchup because I can't. In this day and age, you can't be good at everything.
It's true.
Just too much out there.
Yeah, now, but like if you're taking a list and you're like, oh man, this list is really good against Ewoks, it's like, honestly, you won't see Ewoks a lot because it's a very expensive list because I don't think a lot of people, $300 just for one list. Like Geonosians is, it's more of the exception and not like the standard. When like most droid list, CIS list will be like a droid list, or most rebel list will more be like a character central list and not like an Ewok.
Yeah, and I think that all comes back to you not over skewing, because even in last year, right? For example, Luke wins Worlds and never faces a Dark Trooper list.
Yeah,
if you're the player who brings 6 HH12s and I don't know what else, just every single piece of impact that you can, and you never face a Dark Trooper, you're going to have an uphill battle the whole time. Not to say you don't want to have contingencies for that matchup and have thought about it, but you can't go all in.
Yep.
Over the course of a 9-round tournament, there's too much out there. And I like what you said about you don't want to read too much into the final standings in a tournament, especially sometimes a lot of articles they stop at the top 8 cutoff, even if there necessarily wasn't a top 8 cutoff in the event. I like to just go to Game Uplink as well. They're both good. Just remember that the difference between the guy who finished 6th and the person who finished 11th, just because one ends up maybe in an article or in a cut, there's not a huge difference there. It can be tiebreakers or just funky matchup. So kind of getting an idea of probably like looking at the X and 1 lists and taking some broad generalizations. I'm not going to look at LVO and be like, well, Kenobi won LVO and he had Kenobi Rex and an ATRT, so I need a plan for that specific list. But again, I would take it as another data point of, okay, here's something that has beefy red saves with a lot of defensive tech and a fire support platform. So I want to be ready for defensive tech, big fire supports, and know what I'm doing in there. And again, that's kind of informing this list here, because that's why I'm going with shore troopers instead of storms, because they can operate at range 4 beyond fire support range. Storms are going to walk into fire support range. So that's an example of broad takeaway. Okay, let's account for that.
Yeah.
Beauty.
I think that wraps up, unless we want to build one more list or we get.
Oh, I mean, if you want to, I don't know how different your process is. If you want to build something,
I think it's the same process. I think the only thing, like, my process is like let's say my Yoda list is like, I build that and I'm like, okay, what objectives do I want to shine for this? Because Yoda, he can shine on every objective. It's just which one do I want to? And me, I was like, I pick one that's like, I want to shine more on like something that like a gun line is not great at, like bombing run and breakthrough, or and like bombing run, breakthrough, recover, and hostage, and just have those shine really well. So it's just like, because I know most gun lines aren't going to be great at that. And then I take those into account, and then I just round it out to like, okay, I don't want to go full objective because I don't think that's my play style. Like, I'm not like an R2 play style guy. I don't like playing R2.
Yeah.
And that's where like I just bring in more beef on my core. So we don't need to build the whole list. That's just like general.
I mean,
recap.
we can. I mean,
no. That's just
we can always cut it off.
No. It's just it's general. We'll keep it a general recap there. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah. I think there's a good discussion. I like this. This is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, happy. I mean, again, the most important thing is reps in a sense, and good reps. If you want to test a specific matchup, try to get with a friend and test that matchup versus scouring TTS and hitting up looking for game. It's good to just get volume, but you can do a lot more quickly with focused practice.
Yeah.
And say, hey, Seth, you're good at playing. You usually play clone objective skew, but hey, can you play a clone gun line so I can practice this list into it and see how bad it goes. And you don't want to necessarily test your best matchups. You want to test like
your worst matchups or the average matchups,
or like average or tough. It's like, hey, I think this might be a tough matchup. Do I need to put more tech in for it, or can I get by?
Yeah.
Right. Like last year, Kyle and I were playing when Blizzard and Darks were the big thing. We did a matchup in probably right about this time of Blizzards versus Dark to find out, hey, does Blizzard have enough to do what it takes, or does Blizzard need to tech something extra? And same for Darks. Hey, did my Dark list have what it takes to take on a regular Blizzard, or do I need to adjust a little bit? So focused practice helps a lot if you can get it, which is sometimes a luxury. I get it.
It's true.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, again, just flood the airwaves with your thoughts on our new artwork. Tell us how great it is. Tell us how great. Yeah. Call into your local station and just tell them that you love the new artwork, and hopefully they won't kick you off the air.
That's funny. If you call a local radio station and record that conversation telling them about Bombad Generals, you will definitely get an attaboy from me.
Okay, there you go. I was wondering what the prize we were giving up for that.
Yes.
Mostly, whatever you do, just make sure it's within the law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so
build good lists.
Right build good lists.
Build good lists. Stay in the law.
Stay within the law.
Get reps. And stay gungan.
There we go. We found it.
This has been the Bombad Generals.
Listening to Bombad Generals is not scientifically proven to make you a better Legion player. Side effects may include bad dice rolls, missed triggers, aim losses, bankruptcy, divorce, vomiting, and sudden death. Ask your doctor if Bombad Generals is right for you.